So we are all assembled, it would appear, or it would seem so. So I will call the meeting to order. This is the regular City Council meeting for May 4th for the City of Minnetrista. So first, I'd like to all ask that you stand while Mr. Baroni says Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. So I will do a sound check, and also at the same time, this will be a roll call. We'll start with myself. This is Lisa Whalen, the mayor. Also present are, and when I call your name, would you please just say I'm here? Councilmember Pam Mortensen. I'm here. Councilmember Mike Molitor.
I'm here.
Councilmember John Chamberlain.
I'm here.
Councilmember Shannon Bruce.
I'm here.
City Engineer Allison Fauski.
I am here.
City Clerk Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
Director of Administration Ellie Apophis.
I am here.
Public Works Superintendent Gary Peters.
Here.
Okay. City Administrator Mike Baroni.
I'm here.
Finance Director Brian Grimm.
I'm here.
Community Development Director David Abel.
I am here.
Attorney Ron Beatty.
Here.
And then our Chief of Police Paul Falls.
I am here.
All right. So with that, then we need approval of the agenda. Are there any changes or additions to the agenda?
This is Councilmember Bruce. I have an addition to the agenda. I'd like to add council discussion about the emergency order to the agenda since we have a relatively light agenda tonight.
Okay. We would add that under business items, and it'll be the last business item, A, B, C, D, and so that'll be E.
Okay, thank you.
Any other additions or changes? Hearing none, then is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented with that one change?
So moved.
This is Pam, and I make that move.
Okay, Pam, Ms. Mortensen made that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Okay, I think Ms. Bruce made that second. So we'll go down the line. Ms. Bruce, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Chamberlain, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Mortensen?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so motion passes 5-0. We don't have any special presentations this evening. We'll move on to persons to be heard. It's slightly different than in the past. Mr. Baroni, are there any emails you need to read?
Mayor Whalen, there are no emails that I received today, so there's nothing for persons to be heard.
All right, thank you. So we'll move on to consent agenda. We have consent agenda item A, approve our work session meeting minutes from April 6th. Those were brought back. And then B is approve our work session meeting minutes from April 20th. C is approve our city council regular meeting minutes from April 20th. D is a resolution to approve claims. And E is approve a step increase for Trevor Barrett in our public works maintenance department. Are there any you wish to remove?
I'd like to remove item D, please. This is Molitor.
Okay, you have some questions on the claims. Are there any other items? Otherwise, we have A, B, C, and E remaining. Is there a motion to approve consent agenda items A, B, C, and E?
This is
Pam, I make that motion.
So Ms. Mortensen, or Ms. Bruce made the motion and Ms. Mortensen seconded. I believe that's correct. And
yes.
All those in favor? Okay. So Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Molitor?
Yes.
Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so motion passes on consent agenda items A, B, C, and E. So we'll talk about number D. That's Mr. Molitor. You had some questions on the claims.
Yes. On page 15 of the packet, we've got an expenditure to Carl Chevrolet for a pickup truck for $33,000. We also have an expenditure to Lano Equipment for front mount snowblower. My recollection is these probably were both within the capital improvements plan. But I would have expected us to have a discussion prior to actually having seen this on the ledger, the roll here. And I would just like to reiterate that even though we have things like this budgeted, I think we still should be having a discussion about this prior to making the expenditures. And we've had that conversation in the past. I think, especially with the truck, it's a pretty major expenditure for the city. So I'm not sure how the rest of the council feels on that.
I think it's not a bad idea. If there's a timing issue, I don't know that there would be, but that might be the only caveat. But maybe Mr. Peters can weigh in just a little bit quickly on the purchase.
Well, the snowblower we're trying to get in before the state bid closes on it. The state bid only lasts so long, and then they have to renegotiate it. So we got that underneath the state bid. We got a really good deal on it through Lano Equipment. It was about $6,000 less than the closest other bid that we had. As far as the truck goes, we ordered that through the Chevy deal before time allotted for them to be done. We wanted the Chevy this year instead of a Ford, just for price wise, it was the cheapest truck again between that and the Dodge and the Chevy, and that too, before they stop production on them.
Okay. Well, maybe just in the future, maybe what we should do is at the beginning of the year, just kind of a reminder, these are the items that we're looking at purchasing for within the next 6 months, and maybe in June again, kind of just to refresh our memories and just so that we are aware that these are expenses coming down the road. Would that be possible?
I think that would be probably a good idea. And I'm not looking, this is probably more for Mike than it is for Gary, because it would apply across the entire organization. But, we've had this conversation several times where just because it's budgeted doesn't mean it's approved. And I just want to make sure that we're still looking at this stuff and making a sign off on it before we make the actual purchase. So if it's twice a year or whatever, it's fine. But I think it's a little frustrating to all of a sudden see it show up on the roll after we've already purchased it. I don't think that's the intent of how we should be operating.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions on the claims then? If there are none, then Mr. Molitor, do you want to make a motion to approve?
No, I don't.
Okay. Is there another motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve. This is Pam.
Okay. All right. Ms. Mortensen made that motion. Is there a second to that motion?
John T. I will second.
All right. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none then, how do you vote, Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
How do you vote, Mr. Chamberlain?
Yes.
And Mr. Molitor?
No.
And Ms. Mortensen?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so motion passes 4-1, Molitor dissenting. And so we move on to our public hearings. These are all renewal of liquor licenses. They're for Burrell Oaks Golf Club, West Tonka Recreational Association, and Buddy Boy Fine Barbecue. I believe that's Ms. Lindquist. Do you want to take this?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Burrell Oaks Golf Club, WRA, Cox Culinary Arts doing business as Buddy Boy and Fine Barbecue have all applied to renew their liquor licenses for the 2020 through 2021 licensing period. The liquor licenses are good from June 1st to May 31st of the following year. They all have submitted completed renewal applications and have passed their background checks. Notices were sent to property owners within 500 feet for each renewal, and to date, the city has not received any comments regarding that. Burrell Oaks currently is licensed to sell intoxicating liquor, wine, and beer, and has a permit to sell on Sundays. WRA currently is licensed to sell 3-2 beer with the incidental sales of pop, candy, and bagged snacks. Buddy Boy Fine Barbecue is licensed to sell intoxicating liquor, wine, and beer at their restaurant and attached patio. All are currently seeking to continue with the same operations as they have in the past. Staff is recommending approval of the renewal of all liquor licenses for Burrell Oaks, WRA, and Buddy Boy Fine Barbecue with the conditions outlined in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions of staff? Otherwise, what I have to do is I'm going to go to a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing. If there's, Ms. Falsky, I'm not sure how we're going to do this. You said that there are some people that have dialed in.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I am seeing one user that has called in. If you would like me to, I can unmute that caller.
Okay, then we can do that. So I can.
Okay, there you go, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. So this is a public hearing for the liquor licenses for, as you heard, did you have any comments for or against these liquor licenses? Hello? All right, I'm going to assume no comments. With that, then we'll move on. Can everybody still hear me?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes. Ms. Lindquist?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
All right. So,
can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. It's kind of coming and going, but all right, I can hear you now. So we've held the public hearing. No comments were received for or against these liquor licenses. So I'm going to now close the public hearing and take it back to staff and or council. Question for staff, do you want to have these be separate individual motions to approve them, or do you want council to approve all three in one
Madam
motion?
Madam Mayor, only if you have issues with a particular license. Otherwise, I'm okay with approving them all at one time.
All right. Okay, anybody have a specific or any issue with any one of these? All right, then is there a motion to approve the liquor license for renewal for Burrell Oaks Golf Club, the renewal for West Tonka Recreation Association, and the renewal for the license for Buddy Boy Fine Barbecue with staff's recommendations recommendations.
John T., so moved.
All right, Mr. Tremperlin made that motion. Is there a second?
This is Mike, I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Molitor made that second. So all those in favor, I will say aye. Ms. Mortensen?
Aye.
Mr. Molitor?
Aye.
Mr. Tremperlin?
Aye.
And Ms. Bruce?
Aye.
All right, motion passes 5-0. So that concludes our public hearings for this evening. So we'll move on to our business items. Our first business item will be our discussion of the 2020 street maintenance discussions. As you know, we had asked staff to bring back some recommendations, and they brought back a number of them. And so I want to just start out quickly by saying they presented us with two options. That doesn't mean that we have to go all in with option one or all in with option two. We can pick and choose if we think that there's some in one option or like something better in another one. And the other thing, before we get started on that, I did talk to staff today about this, but I wanted to bring this up. So if you go to page, I think it's 29, I think it is, where they show the two options. At the very, right above the option, the paragraph reads, based on discussions with staff, the County Road 110 overlay to the Gale Woods Farm entrance, estimated to be $17,425. that can be paid through the general maintenance fund. But here's my request, or my recommendation, is to actually take that off for this year and use those maintenance funds for the Kennedy Memorial Drive. Here's why. I think we need to look at how we're going to move forward with that road. That road only services the Three Rivers Park District properties. And they own 3 different properties. They're all owned by Three Rivers. They're park properties. And I'm not certain that we need to be spending Minnetrista tax dollars on providing them a road to their entrance. What I think we should have some discussions about is maybe having them take over that road and having them pay for the maintenance of it, since it's far more people outside of Minnetrista that visit that park than people living in Minnetrista. That's just one of the discussion items I'd like to maybe even start out with. I did talk to Mr. Beatty, and I talked to Mr. Abel about it, and I also talked to Allison Fauski and Mr. Baroni about it. If any of you would like to weigh in before council makes comments, you're welcome to. Maybe Mr. Beatty, start with you.
Well, Madam Mayor, Council, as the mayor said, we had a short discussion today. The question was, can the city do that? And I said, yes, I think that's possible. I think the method of doing so would be to vacate the road, as we've done in other contexts. And when that happens, all that means is the city removes the easement it has for the right-of-way, and it goes back by law to whoever has the underlying fee. And so if there's a policy decision to do so, then that might be the method for getting rid of the road.
Okay, and I'm not saying we're going to do that for sure. I'm just saying I'd like to explore the option and the opportunity, if you will. It's no different than other roads that either go through Three Rivers Park District's parks or even border them. A lot of times they take over the maintenance of those roads. But so all I'm saying is this year for 2020, maybe we should have that discussion and determine what we're going to do with that road. If we keep it, then next year we could do that maintenance. If we don't keep it, we're going to then pass it on to Three Rivers and they can take care of it. Anybody have a comment on that?
This is Councilmember Molitor. On the surface, it sounds like a good idea. I assume there's no utilities under that road. And if that's the case, I'd be interested in exploring that as well.
All right. Mr. Chumperland, any ideas or thoughts?
Nope, I would agree exactly with Mr. Molitor said. As long as we don't need access to it, leave it
right
for Three Rivers.
Yeah. Ms. Bruce?
I support that too.
All right. And Ms. Mortensen?
I agree.
All right. So can we then all agree that we take those dollars and use them towards Kennedy Memorial Drive rather than taking them out of, so they would then come out of our general maintenance fund versus our road improvement fund? It would be not quite the same. Kennedy Memorial Drive is estimated at $13,175, and the other one was $17,425. Is there a?
Can we hold off on that part of the discussion? Because if we choose option 2 and do Kennedy Memorial, then you're really pushing the 150 mark. So maybe we should just have that as part of.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't, because the 13,000 would be a separate project.
Okay.
Yeah, Kennedy Memorial would be a totally separate project, and it wouldn't. It would be handled the same way as the Gale Woods Farm, as the County Road 110 overlay would be handled. Do you understand what I'm saying? It comes out of the general maintenance fund, so it wouldn't. We can make that decision later. if you will. I mean, that's not an issue. I was just trying to replace one out of the list here that we have that would be closest in price so that it could fall under the general maintenance fund budget. And that,
I get that.
Okay.
I get where you're coming from, but here's my concern, and that kind of plays into the overall option 1, option 2. Option 2, the PCIs on the roads are higher. Generally the roads are a little bit better shape, and that's generally where we're trying to put these overlays on, is to extend the life and keep them from falling further behind. The ones in option 1, and specifically Kennedy Memorial, is such a low PCI that I'm not so sure it's a good idea to put an overlay on that. And so using that logic, to me, would say maybe we don't do Kennedy Memorial Drive, we just do what's on option 2. Now, if that's, that's just my initial thought. So.
Okay. So before we start discussing which option, and again, this isn't a option 1 or option 2. It can be you can take some from option 1 and some from option 2. You can mix and match kind of thing. But I do have a question on Clarence Avenue. Back in August of 2019, and this would be a question for our engineer, Ms. Fauske. Back in August of 2019, we got an estimate of around just a little over $17,000 for Clarence Avenue. And now we're seeing an estimate of nearly double that. What's changed on Clarence? Why double the amount? I could see if it's 20% or even 30% higher, but when it's double, that says to me something's changed.
So, Madam Mayor, the number that I've included for Clarence Avenue was for an overlay, but it's also noted that there was curb on the west side. And if Mr. Peters can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I'm not certain that 17,000 included the curb on the west side. But that's where that number came from. Because I was, as stated in the memo, I've updated the numbers to remove the milling component when we're not proposing to do a mill, because that does decrease the cost. But when I was looking at Clarence with the curb on that west side, I was using the original estimate for that work. And
okay,
if it's coming in high, we can certainly look at, I mean, if council's desire is to look at doing Clarence Avenue, and with the idea that it might be lower than that, you can provide staff with some guidance as far as whether or not the council would like to include that. And then we can do a deeper dive into those numbers and the estimates and what the difference was between what's being presented this evening and what was looked at in 2019.
Okay, all right. All right, so anybody have some comments regarding option 1, option 2, or comments regarding any of the listed ones?
That's John T. If we move, well, even if we didn't move Kennedy out, my concern is to spend near the 150 or to project spending near the 150 this year. So doing the mix and match to come to that number, knowing that next year we may not have this capability, what with hard scrabble, using up funds. Before you had talked about moving Kennedy out, which I don't have a problem with, I was looking at was interested in doing option 1 and moving retreat up to option 1. Prior to moving Kennedy out, if we added retreat, we'd be at 140,000. If we move Kennedy, now we're at 127,000. So it falls within the numbers that I think we're comfortable with. And the retreat circle 1 and Sterling are just down the road from each other. Retreat is patched pretty badly. It's fairly rough in there, although none of these are picturesque, but that would be my thoughts.
Okay. My question to staff earlier today was, and maybe Gary and Allison, you can weigh in. I know there's these PCI numbers here, but when I look at these pictures, I don't know if they are indicative of the PCI numbers, or if, and I know these are old, I know they're 3 years old now, but if, I think we are trying to do, maintain the better of all of them, but we're also looking at which ones are on the cusp of becoming a reclamation that we could maybe save and salvage and extend the life for another 7 to 10 years. When I looked at those pictures, it was Sterling Game Farm and Retreat Circle that really said to me that we needed to do something like immediately, or else they're going to be reclamation. Can you weigh in on that, Ms. Bowski and Mr. Peters?
Sure, Madam Mayor. You're exactly right in that the pavement condition scores being 3 years old, that's why we typically look at the 3-year cycle, is because there's so much deterioration that can occur on a road over that 3-year time frame. And so that's why the pictures were provided to the council, so that if council didn't have an opportunity to go and look at these roadways for themselves, they could see, you know, some of the, I tried to take a representative condition of the roadway there. So as far as whether these are on the cusp of an overlay versus a reclamation, they could very well be there. Some are you know, certain portions are likely over that edge. You know, and we'd have to get the updated pavement corings to tell us what the a project would be on that, if it would be a reclamation project or an overlay. My understanding with these discussions on these overlay options was to take a look at something to help extend the life of these roads until there's a time that we can get to a project.
Right, that, I think we all understood that same. So are we, then tell me again, so if we did, so is Game Farm, if you look at these and compare them, if you look at Fielding Trail compared to Game Farm Circle is worse than Fielding, just by the pictures. And Retreat is even worse, and Sterling is not a whole lot better. So would it be better to do Sterling, Retreat, and Game Farm Circle versus Fielding, Game Farm, and Retreat? In other words, if we went with these options, one option excludes Sterling and the other option excludes Game Farm and Retreat.
This is Shannon Bruce. I think you have to remember that it's not just a visual that is reflected in the PCIs. I think there's more to it than that. So pictures can be deceiving, and maybe Ms. Fowski can speak to that.
Certainly. So the pavement condition scores are a visual. They're based on the cracks that are seen there. And so that's step one in establishing your pavement management plan. And then step two is to get the corings to tell you what's underneath there, what are the specialists seeing in the pavement condition beyond the surface to provide a recommendation on the type of road. So in short answer, I can't tell you by just the pavement condition scores or just by looking at the road, which road is at that cusp of needing a reclamation. There's more to it than that. The pavement corings is what tells us that. And you can look at the condition of the road there, and looking at the condition of the road from the pictures, that's what you get the pavement condition scores from.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on why some of these are 1.5-inch overlay versus a 1-inch overlay? I mean, I get it if it's edge mill, that makes sense, but I'm not sure, like on the second option, why two of them are 1.5 inches and one's only 1 inch.
Certainly, Madam Mayor, if I could defer that to Mr. Peters. It was his numbers that we were working off of. I don't know if he had some methodology between the 1 and 1.5 inch overlay.
Basically, I put it on that way to give us a little bit more strength on the road, a little bit more of a thickness on there to hopefully get that 10 years out of the road.
Then why are we only doing an inch on one of them?
Retreat, I think we can get by with that. There's concrete curb and gutter there to help edge support where the other ones do not have. It's a rural section, so there's no edge support to protect the side of the road. Where we do have on Retreat Circle has curb and gutter down the whole length, which helps support the edge of the road.
It doesn't look like it in the picture, but maybe I'm just not seeing it very well. There's no curb and gutter on, or no curb on Retreat, at least not in this picture.
No, not on that picture, but there is all.
Okay.
Something to note for the other council members that may not remember, all the streets in option 2 were assessed when Game Farm Road was put in. So all those homes along those roads, Fielding, Game Farm, Retreat, are still paying, upwards of $9,000 per lot for Game Farm Road. And I think that's one of the reasons that we're looking at them, and Sterling Drive as well was assessed for Game Farm Road. So I'd like to see, and I live on Fielding Trail. I don't care if Fielding Trail is one of them, but I think Sterling, Game Farm, Retreat should be at the top of the list for that reason.
Yeah. And I do recall when, whether it was last year or the year before, when we were talking about different roads, and we were talking about Retreat and Sterling, doing them as a reclamation project. And that's exactly what I said. Those properties were just Sterling and Retreat. They were just assessed a few years ago for, $9,000. So I said, I don't think that it would be a good idea to go back in right now and then assess them another $9,000 or whatever it might be. So I think this is why staff is bringing this back, saying, okay, let's delay this. Let's do these roads. And if it were up to me, I'd do Sterling, Game Farm, and Retreat. Again, just from a visual, they look to be like they're on the cusp, and I'd like to get those done. And you could add in, if you wanted to, County Road 110 extension, or you could add in, you couldn't do Fielding because of the cost, but I also think Fielding should be done within the next year or two as well. We may have to look at that for 21 or 22, but yeah, I guess I would kind of like to mix and match Sterling, Game Farm, Retreat, and then maybe either Clarence or County Road 110 extension.
We're not doing County Road 110 extension, remember?
No, there's two. Okay, there's two of them. The 110 West, the west part of it, that's the one I was talking about earlier. The other part, it's called County Road 110 Extension East, and that's the part that goes, it almost intersects with Halsted, and then it goes kind of perpendicular to County Road 110. It goes past the mini golf course there, the mini golf place. So it's two different roads, okay, which is confusing. But so that's, I was just looking at dollars and how it could add up to be real close to that 150. And if you did the County Road 110 East portion of it, Sterling Drive, Game Farm, and Retreat, you're at 154 or 155. So you're real close to that 150.
I would take the County Road 110 off of it till we have it all decided, and then just do the other three.
Okay, it's not included in that discussion, but okay. Anybody else?
So that would be Sterling Drive, Game Farm, Retreat. That comes to 130.
Yeah. Depending on where Clarence comes in, if it does come out at like maybe 17 or 20,000, as the original was 17.5, if we could get that down to around the 20,000 mark, you could add Clarence in. What do you think of that?
I think the PCI is too low on that.
I tend to agree. PCI is 40 or lower. I'm afraid we're wasting our money.
Okay. Well, then Kennedy Memorial is too low too. So Well, then you'd have to go up to the County Road 110 extension, the
No, you
east.
wouldn't. We
East
got
part.
131. It's right between the two options. I don't know what's the problem.
Well, as Mr. Chumperland was saying, he wanted to try and get as close to that 150 mark as we can, trying to get as many roads, trying to knock off as many roads as we possibly can.
Well, to his point about Halstead next year, or not Halstead, Hardscrabble, you know, if it goes over, we'd like to have a little extra for that. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm not. I'm just saying the three together is 131. That seems right in the middle of the options. It seems pretty reasonable.
Okay.
And I don't think Clarence makes sense. I don't think Kennedy makes sense. And I'm just not comfortable with going with 110.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I think Sterling, Game Farm, and Retreat makes sense.
Okay. All right. Pam?
Would Kennedy be done, but out of the general maintenance fund?
Well, that was my thought, but Mr. Molitor is saying he doesn't think, and Ms. Bruce are saying they don't think that you should do anything with the road that's under 40 PCI. It may, but then at some point, you're probably looking at, you know, more like 65,000 to do Kennedy versus 13. And that would be probably a reclamation.
Could
Maybe
I hear Gary's opinion on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, good one. All right, Gary, Mr. Peters?
Well, I was going to do any of them, and just to clarify, the pictures are wrong. Retreat Circle is the one with the concrete curb and gutter. They're marked wrong. I know it's here. The Retreat Circle and Sterling are reversed. Sterling is probably the worst of the two, but I would definitely try to, if we're going to save anything, Game Farm Circle, Sterling Drive, and Fielding would probably be one of the top. I would not try to tackle Sterling because it is starting to really fall apart. So it's gotten a lot worse than what it was before. So I think that, I don't know if it's, Alice, in your opinion, I don't know. I don't think it's worth trying to save.
I think,
Allison?
thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a measure of how much longer you'll get, how much additional life you'll get out of the pavement. If you're getting if there are significant cracks underneath, and you start seeing that gravel underneath the road, and delamination, all those things in the pavement core, it'll come through, it'll reflect through into the new pavement. So the idea was, I guess the question is when would you want to come in and do Sterling? Is it trading it for trying to go and get some extra life out of what's there right now? Or the other option is to just let it go and then know at some point in time you'll have to get in there sooner rather than later.
Well, my question to you would be this: what if it was a mill and overlay? Would that, or is it even beyond that?
So a mill and overlay is going to get you the same result as just putting additional pavement over top. You're still going to get the cracking that's there come and reflect through, meaning that the cracks that are there right now will eventually show up in the new pavement over top. So the more cracks there are on the road, the more your new pavement will likely crack as well.
Okay. All right.
And if it went up, Sterling went up to 1.5 inch overlay, would that make it better? I know it costs more, but
It would definitely add more strength to it, yes. You know, I mean, it would definitely get a little bit more life out of it. If that, you know, and that, I think that is going to be what we're looking for, is to extend life, then yes, that would help immensely to do that, to get us through to the, like you said, to that point where we need to do, more than what we have on there.
I kind of like that
So
idea.
really, yeah, okay.
And
Go
then
ahead, Mike, I'm
also,
sorry.
if you did on, I think we were talking Sterling, Game Farm, and Retreat. If you did 1.5 inches on all of them, that would probably get you, I'm just guesstimating here, so I'm looking for correction from Allison or Gary. That would probably get you total to that closer to that 150 figure.
Yeah,
Nope.
to add on an extra half inch onto Retreat as well. Yes, it would. Or Sterling,
Okay.
yes, it would.
Okay.
Mhm.
Then
Well,
I think
yeah.
then I think we've got 3 streets that we're doing 1.5 inches on. I'd be comfortable with that. Then I think it's actually worth doing.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
So
Yep,
Gary,
I like that too.
All right,
Gary,
And John?
Allison, either how does Retreat compare to Susan and Scott, which we took off the list?
It's definitely in better shape than those two. Well, Susan is not bad, as compared to what Scott is. Scott is definitely worse. Retreat is, like I say, with the concrete curb and gutter, that helps get that water way faster to get a crown back in the road. It would definitely prolong the life of that road, and having a concrete curb. Why it happened to be that way, I don't know, but it's great to see it in there, and it would, the life of that road would be preserved with an overlay.
Thanks.
okay.
So can I interject here? So I'm trying to track all these options here. And so I think I just heard Game Farm and Retreat, which is at 1 inch, and Sterling, which is at 1 inch, but I think Pam just said, what if we went to 1.5 inches? Are those the three? Are you still, I think I heard Mr. Molitor say something about they're all 1.5 inches, and I think Retreat's still at 1 inch. So that's
No,
not
I'm
saying
saying
make that
yeah.
1.5 inches.
Yeah,
So make
I
that
think
1.5 inches as well.
Yeah, all
Yeah,
three of
so all-
them. Sterling
yeah.
Drive, 1.5 inches. Game Farm Circle, 1.5 inches. Retreat Circle, 1.5 inches. So
Okay.
what's listed in our packet is 1 inch for Sterling and 1 inch for Retreat. But if we increase it to 1.5 inches, it's going to up the price a bit, which is probably then going to get us closer to that 150. But it's also going to extend the life of both of those roads a little bit longer. I think that's what we're trying to do.
Okay, that was just clarifying because, like I said, I think the one discussion was Pam mentioned Sterling, but I didn't hear Retreat. But I'm good that you're doing that. So
Okay, so do you want a motion on this so that's clear and direct?
Madam Mayor, I have direction. The point of the discussion this evening was to give staff direction so that we can
Okay.
prepare a professional services agreement for the council to consider to get a quote package together.
All right, and we'll see that at the May 18th meeting then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions by council? All right. Any questions of staff? Of council?
nope.
All right. All right. So I think we're good to go. We'll see that back on the 18th and looking forward to doing those roads. Can we also then bring back the discussion regarding the County Road 110 overlay? Can we bring, and I'm talking about the west section of that extension. Can we bring that back on the 18th as well for discussion so we know what our options are and maybe make a decision at that meeting as to what we're going to do with that road? I'm not saying we're going to necessarily make the improvements to it in 2020, but at least then we would know what our options are and where we're going to go with that road.
Is this the one that's is this the one where we're going to do the work, or is this the one where we're talking about forfeiting it over to the county or to Three Rivers?
Forfeiting it over to Three Rivers.
Okay, so then we probably
that
shouldn't.
section.
Okay, so then we probably shouldn't call it overlay because that's not what we're talking about. And we're talking about forfeiture.
Correct.
Forfeiture is not the right word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. What are we going to do with the road, I guess, is what I'm asking. So if we can bring that back at the May 18th discussion, it seems like it would dovetail in with this really well. Okay. All right.
Madam
I
Mayor,
think,
I was just
yes.
gonna add one quick question that you open it up is, I assume once, and I'm not a public works person, but as from going from an inch to an inch and a half, I guess we'll be able to tell once they run the numbers, if it bumps up the estimate closer to 150 versus, we just want to be careful to stay under that 175 for sure for the quotes limit. And then, I guess maybe Gary and Allison will be able to run that in the next week or so to what that extra half-inch overlay, if that makes the 25,000 a retreat, does it make it 37? Does it make it 42? And I don't know what that does, but that's what we'll have to find out. Sure. So.
Okay. Yeah. Allison, do you know percentage-wise approximately what an extra half-inch would do? So, like, for instance, on one of them, we're looking at 143. So on Sterling, it's 43,631. If we're looking at, an extra 10%, 20%, I mean, what are we looking at?
Madam Mayor, the bulk of the cost for this type of work is strictly pavement. So I think we could, from a high level standpoint, we can look at increasing that one segment by 50%. So we'll take a look at the numbers so that when we bring this back to the council in 2 weeks, we'll have that number updated for your consideration.
Okay, but when we come back in 2 weeks, I don't want to have another discussion about it because it keeps moving this work date further and further down the road, and we want to be able to get good bids and be able to get the work done sometime this summer, early fall. So when you come back on the 18th, then we're going to have a professional services agreement along with updated numbers, estimates.
Correct. And when we started looking at budgeting these numbers for the overlay, the discussion was to get as close to $150,000 as possible to give us that extra $25,000 flexibility to the $175,000 cap for quotes.
Okay. All right.
My recollection. So I think we have enough space in here in these estimates and with our quotes, our limit for quote packages, that we should be able to get these within that range.
Okay. All right. Good. Then with that, we'll move on to our next business item, and that's approve the offer of employment to Nikki Meyer, I believe, police officer. Mr. Paul, Chief Falls, is that you? Or do you want to, is that Allie?
I think Allie's going to handle this one.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Allie?
Ruh-roh.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Now we can.
Sorry. My apologies. Tonight, the council is being asked to approve the full offer of employment for Nikki Myrie as a police officer, replacing Michael Bruzek, who voluntarily resigned in November of 2019. Advertising for this position closed on November 15th with 34 applicants. 15 of those applicants were interviewed in mid-January, and 3 of those candidates were selected for a final interview on January 23rd. The Personnel Committee met after final interviews and concluded that Nikki Myrie emerged as the final candidate. Mrs. Myrie was offered the position with a conditional offer of employment upon completing a background investigation, psychological evaluation, a pre-placement physical examination, and a drug and alcohol test. Nikki successfully completed all aspects, even though the process was a bit delayed due to COVID-19 and other circumstances. A bit more about Nikki: she obtained a bachelor's degree in criminal justice and a certificate in law enforcement, in addition to various defense tactics courses. Nikki has 1 year experience with the Eden Prairie Police Department as a CSO and almost 2 years experience as a security corporal. Given her successful completion of all offer requirements, it is the recommendation that the council approves this full offer of employment tonight. With that, although I wasn't a part of this employment process, I can try and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions on Ms. Polfus? It's been a long process. I'm starting back in November, so I'm very excited actually to have a female police officer. That'll be a nice addition, I think, kind of helping to round out our staff. So I'm excited about that and excited to get another officer on board. Chief Falls, I'm sure you will be too. So do you want to add anything?
Madam Mayor, Council, we are obviously very excited to get Nikki started. We've done a lot of things to prepare for her field training process, which is a fairly lengthy process, but this is a good time of year to start training an officer as calls for service definitely trend up in the spring and definitely in the summer. So we've been in contact with her, and I know she's excited to join our team as well. So we're all excited to make that happen.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right. So with that, is there a motion to approve the offer of employment to Nikki Myrie for our police officer position?
This is Shannon, so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
This is John, I'll second.
Okay, so Ms. Bruce made that motion and Mr. Trumperlin seconded that. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor will signify with aye. Ms. Mortensen?
Aye.
Mr. Molitor?
Aye.
Mr. Trumperlin?
Aye.
Ms. Bruce?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. That's 5-0. So, looking forward to having her on board. So next, we're approving the professional services agreement for the 2020 sewer lining project. I believe that's Ms. Fauski.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Working with Superintendent Peters with regards to some sewer televising that he has obtained through the years, we've identified some segments of mostly sanitary sewer and a few storm sewer segments that are candidates for a lining project, a cured in place epoxy resin liner. So with that, we've submitted for your consideration a fee to put together a quote package so that we can prepare a plan set and some specifications to send out to some contractors and get pricing to complete this work. The fees are included in your packet, a breakdown of the fee as well as the schedule. The goal is to get this out for quotes yet this summer and have the contractor do the work in July and August and complete the work in the fall here. The majority of this work, again, being sanitary sewer, would assist in abating inflow and infiltration into the sanitary sewer system. So there is $100,000 a year that's budgeted for inflow and infiltration abatement. We also have a couple of storm sewers that have been identified, and it's been several years since those were televised. So we'll, if the council authorizes us to move forward with this work, we'll take a look and see if what will need to be done is if some of these contractors might want to televise the storm sewer ahead of time to make sure that they're still candidates for lining. The one lining in particular that we are looking at for the storm sewer is within Loring Drive. It's at a low point. So as far as, we certainly don't want to get the cart in front of the horse, so to speak, when it comes to storm sewer improvements. But that being said, given that it's a direct discharge to the lake, I would not anticipate that the Watershed District would allow the city to increase the size of the pipe going to the lake. So that's why this particular storm sewer is included on the list here as well. Another item to note is you'll see some of the sanitary sewer sections are within this year's street improvement project. This is for, these segments are the pipes that take the sewage from the homes to the lift station, which is not being replaced with the street improvement project here in 2020. The pipe that is being replaced is the force main. So it's the pressurized pipe that takes the effluent from the lift station and back up to 44 there. So we're not duplicating any effort through here. And the lining project that we're looking to move forward with is it's not an intrusive measure where you'd have to cut into the road. Everything can be done by accessing the manholes. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the council might have with this proposal.
Okay, council, any questions? Anyone?
This is
Okay.
Shannon Bruce. On page 41, on page 3 of the letter, there's a reference made in that paragraph before the last paragraph that references that this agreement will be governed by the terms and conditions of the professional services agreement between WSB and the city that was made on January 2005. And that agreement isn't here, and we can't see what the terms and conditions of that agreement are. And I'm just wondering why that wasn't included.
Madam Mayor, if I may answer Councilmember Bruce's question.
Sure, go ahead.
The overall professional services agreement is noted in this professional services agreement from our standpoint to memorialize that there's an overriding umbrella agreement, so to speak, so that when we send a proposal such as this to the city, that it acknowledges that there is another mechanism that is currently in place and has been approved by the city that includes all the legal components between the city and WSB as the engineer. So that's why it's included in there. We're not asking for any changes to that contract. It's just referenced in this letter proposal as a housekeeping item, so to speak, and as a check and balance as far as what other agreement is in place that allows us to use this mechanism as an agreement.
Thank you. Given that agreement is over 15 years old, I would suggest that it might be good to take a look at it and review it. I mean, we talk about ordinances being out of date. We talk about a lot of things that we have to update occasionally. And I think after 15 years, it would be good to take a look at that agreement again.
Ms. Baroni or council members, anybody want to weigh in?
No.
Okay, council? Okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I guess we could take a look at it.
I know this came up a while ago, and it's pretty generic, but certainly take a look at it, but it was pretty generic, and there really wouldn't be any changes, at least when we looked at it before. So, but sure, we can add this to a work session maybe in the future. Obviously, yeah. So, all right. So with that, is there then any other questions? Otherwise, is there a motion then to approve the professional services agreement for the 2020 sewer lining project?
So moved.
I'll make that motion. This is Pam.
Well, I think Mike beat you to it. So Mr. Molitor made the motion and Ms. Mortensen seconded that. All right. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify with aye. Ms. Bruce?
No.
And Mr. Chamberlain?
Aye.
And Mr. Molitor?
Aye.
Ms. Mortensen?
Aye.
And I vote aye, so it's 4-1, Bruce dissenting. Next, we move on to approve the professional service agreement for the 2020 crack fill project. Ms. Spolsky, that's you again?
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of council. Similar to the sewer lining project, the crack filling project, again, was an effort based on some conversations with Superintendent Peters, identifying Game Farm Road East, Game Farm Road North, and Kings Point Road, where some crack filling would benefit the street. Crack filling entails blowing out the cracks within the roads, and then putting in a sealant, within the cracks to extend the life of the roadways by keeping water from intruding into the cracks. So with that, the fee has been put together for your consideration and approval to go and put a quote package together, so that we can go and get some pricing from some contractors to do the work. The schedule provided within the memo would have plans and specifications coming to the council in June, with work being done in July. We propose that this project, if approved by the council, would be paid by the road maintenance fund. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions that the council has.
Okay. So I know there's some question about what funds, when you say road maintenance fund, is this the fund within the Public Works Department, or is it the special road fund that we have? Maybe Brian, that's one for you, I don't know.
We usually have transitioned this to come out of the road maintenance fund that was created, several years ago, and we made more of an emphasis on maintaining roads. So we've usually tried to do some crack filling either every year or every other year, as far as to the tune of 30, 40, 50,000 to at least hit some of these crack fills to extend the life of the roads.
So that comes out of Public Works?
Road maintenance, Fund 406.
Okay, and so what is the other one, the CIP one? What number is that?
Oh, well, there's are you talking just the general fund maintenance dollars out of the general fund? Are you talking about
No, so we have there's two funds, and one fund is called the road maintenance fund, but the other one that we levy for our road improvements, they're kind of almost the same name to them. So I'm trying to figure out now, does this come out of our, this doesn't come out of the road levy that we do every year, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think we use some of our maintenance dollars we get from the states to do some of the smaller projects like this. This really wouldn't come out of the levy dollars that we had. That was more for the street assessment project we're doing this year, and some of these other overlay stuff. So.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Any other questions? Council, have any questions?
This is Councilmember Molitor. Do we have an idea of the estimated cost of the project itself?
Ms. Fauske?
Councilmember Molitor, my apologies. I don't have that number at my fingertips as far as what we were looking at for budget for that particular project.
Or maybe I can jump in. I thought I had seen a number of about 37,000, or was that for something else, Ms. Fauske?
That sounds right, but I apologize. I don't have that number at my fingertips. We were looking at for the scope of the project.
So we get around, you're saying around 50,000 for road maintenance from MSA funds, and we use those on our MSA roads. And this is coming from that fund, and we get around 50,000 a year. Brian?
We get some general maintenance allocation dollars that we can use on any of our roads. We have our construction fund in the MSA dollars, and then we get our annual allotment for maintenance dollars, and this would come out of those maintenance dollars that can be used. And I think right now we get well, it's actually up to about, I think, like $80,000 a year.
Okay. Mike, does that help you at all?
Yeah, I mean, if it sounds like it's in the like $40,000 ballpark, and that's kind of what I want to know. So that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, all right. All right. Any other questions?
This is
Otherwise-
Shannon Bruce. This is Shannon Bruce
Uh-huh.
again. And on page 47, again, that clause is there referencing the 2005 contract with WSB. And I'm uncomfortable approving something that's saying that this is governed by the terms and conditions of a contract that we don't even have in front of us. So I'm going to be voting no on this for that reason.
Okay, all right.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Ms. Bruce, I believe this is in all their contracts that we've received from them for quite some time now. Can you help me understand just why the concern now?
This hasn't been in all the contracts that we've received from them. That's not true.
I don't know why we'd just start referencing it now.
Allison, is that something you just started putting in at this meeting?
I'm just pulling up a prior proposal. I don't have it at my fingertips to tell you. Mary.
My recollection is that the terms and conditions spell out payments, when they're due, how long the city. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just wondering
All right.
if this has always been in there, if this is something new.
I don't think it's new because I know it's come up before, and it's been included in some contracts before. Maybe not all of them, but it has been included in other contracts.
When it has come up, I've raised an issue about it, and I'm raising an issue about it now because it's in this.
Okay. All right. All right. Anybody else have questions? All right. And what is your pleasure then? Do you want to go ahead with approving this professional services agreement for the 2020 crack fill projects?
I just want to ask a question. Can I ask one question?
Sure, of course.
So, Ms. Bruce, I'm confused because you said that this is the first time this has been in the notes or along with packets?
No, I did not say that. I said when it has come up before, I have raised issues about it before, and it is in here, so I'm raising an issue about it here. This is not the first time it's come up. I didn't say that.
Okay. I thought I heard you say
no,
that
Mr.
this was the
Molitor
first
said
time
that
it's
it was
been
in every contract, and I said
Ms.
that
Bruce,
is not true.
Ms. Bruce, let Ms. Mortensen finish. Ms. Mortensen?
I was questioning her because I thought she said a few minutes ago that this was the first time she's seen it. And now she says it has been in there and she's questioned before. So I was just questioning which way it was.
Okay. Well, either way, it doesn't matter. All right. Any other questions? Otherwise, is there a motion to approve the professional service agreement for the 2020 crack fill projects?
John T., so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second that. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
I think Mike beat you to it. So Mr. Trumperlin made that motion and Mr. Molitor seconded that. So how do you vote? Pam Mortensen, how do you vote? Mike Molitor, how do you vote?
Aye.
And John Trumperlin?
Aye.
And Shannon Bruce?
No.
And Lisa Whalen, I vote yes. Motion passes 4-1, Bruce dissenting. So that moves us on to the next business item, which is the emergency order. Ms. Bruce, you had a question?
Yes. We've been operating under this emergency order for over a month now, and this emergency order suspends council oversight in a lot of matters that have changed. I think originally the COVID-19 issue was the reason we passed the emergency order is we didn't know what we were dealing with, and we wanted to be able to take care of any things that came up. And that's the purpose of an emergency order, is to provide safety when there's, a probability of harm to a large number of people. We haven't seen but we haven't seen a significant amount of COVID-19 activity in Minnetrista. The public safety reports that we're getting from Mound haven't indicated that it's causing a staff problem. And at our last meeting, I asked if there were expenditures that we were looking at getting reimbursed for COVID-19, and it didn't sound like there was anything more than, disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizers. So I just wanted to have a conversation with the council about, because this order suspends council oversight, and is that really necessary now? And should council consider rescinding it? And I would like the council to weigh in on that question.
Mayor,
Well,
Madam Mayor, Council, do
yeah.
you want me to comment on that?
Yeah,
again?
first, yeah. Go ahead, Chief Falls.
All right. I think that's a valid question. I can tell you that this is unlike any emergency or that we have ever witnessed in our lifetime. So the longevity of this is certainly something that we are absolutely not used to. With that said, I can tell you that all but a handful, and it might be as few as 2 or 3 cities within Hennepin County, have done the exact same thing. They've declared emergencies. I would say that this has been very drawn out, and we've done a very good job, and I mean the entire state, of trying to flatten this curve so that we don't get hit really hard, really fast. And so that's been working. However, all the experts are still anticipating that this is going to get much, much worse before it gets better. And so I would say the need for the emergency declaration is probably greater now than it was when it was enacted or adopted a month plus ago. And that's based on just conversations that I have many times a week with many different groups. And we're not alone in that. We're not the outlier here by any means. This is what almost every city in Hennepin County has done and is continuing to do. So I'm sensing that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilmember Bruce, but it seems as if you have some concerns about the lack of council oversight because of the emergency. And I can assure you that every expenditure that we have, experienced to this point, Mr. Brony has been aware of, and is none of them have been large, which is very fortunate, and I'm hoping it stays that way. I think one of the important pieces to the emergency declaration is going to come in the form of overtime, because if we get to the point where staff gets depleted, we're going to have no choice but to pay lots of overtime to do whatever we can to cover shifts. And so that's really the biggest concern. And there might be other types of things, but certainly we would see that coming and keep you posted as a council as that information comes forward. So I guess with that,
Thank you, Chief. Yeah.
I'd be happy to answer any
thank you,
questions.
Chief Falls. Okay. Any questions of Chief Falls?
Wouldn't overtime be something that council could approve anyway without an emergency order?
Well, it certainly could be, but in the event of an emergency, I wouldn't necessarily have the time to wait for the next council meeting for that to happen. It would just simply have to happen on the spot to start moving schedules around. If we're in an emergency schedule situation, those decisions are going to have to be made very quickly. Not only for our department, because we're part of the Lake Area Emergency Management Group. And so the philosophy in the Lake Area and the Metro, for that matter, is do whatever you have to do to take care of yourselves. And when you no longer can, then you reach out to the other groups. And so we might be able to take care of ourselves, but someone next to us might not, and we might be forced to help them, or vice versa. So those things have to be able to those decisions have to be able to be made very quickly. And so I'm not in favor of changing or making the emergency declaration go away, because all of the experts involved in this don't advise that. Nobody else is doing that. And so I just don't think that would be a prudent decision at this point in the game. We just don't know what we're up against and how it's going to change in the next 2 weeks to a month.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I think one thing that's kind of concerning to me on this whole thing is we really haven't established the parameters of what we think okay will look like in terms of lifting this. And I think that is a discussion we need to have about, maybe the answer isn't now. I'm not sure about that, but if the answer isn't now, then the answer is when. And I'm not expecting a date, but I am kind of thinking about what we're going to have to see to arrive at the conclusion that we should do that.
And you're saying lifting it so that you can have regular meetings again, or lifting it so that it's not an emergency state? I mean, so what does that mean?
Those are two things, yes.
Okay.
But let's just start with the easy one about when we meet in person again. You know,
I'm not sure that's the easy one.
No, well, okay.
Madam Mayor.
No, I think my question on that is what's the parameter about when we decide we're going to do that again?
Mr. Falls, Chief?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, that is a very good question. And those are discussions that we have routinely at the emergency management level. Matter of fact, I was speaking with Mr. Baroni and Mr. Peters earlier this morning, because cities are starting to talk about trying to make an attempt to reopen City Hall in some way at some point. We're not exactly sure when that's going to happen, but in order for that to happen, there's going to have to be some new precautions and safety measures taken to protect staff and residents. And so we're having these discussions every week on an ongoing basis. And so that's kind of my role in this, is I am having these discussions with other emergency managers, and I am seeing what best practices are really working and are effective, and which ones are not really working and aren't effective. And so I think we're right in the ballpark with everyone else that way. And so certainly I'm as interested in that conversation as you are, and I think I will do what I can to update you. I know there hasn't been a lot of updates because, just frankly, there hasn't been a lot of change yet. We're kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop at this point. So we're not seeing a lot of illness at this point in our staff or Lake area staff, but certainly that can change, because we are starting to see it in other agencies, bigger agencies downtown, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I just heard, hold on just a second. I just heard today that there was a staff member at the assisted living, I think, or senior living, I'm not sure which one, in Maple Plain has been diagnosed with COVID-19. So, you know, it's here in our community. But having said that, maybe what we could do, I can't remember what's on our agenda for our work session for the 18th, or our next meeting, but maybe we could have a discussion about it and have more details and have more information at our next meeting, our next work session. I think it's important enough that we add it, even if it precludes something else. I don't remember what was on our agenda. Would that be something we could do? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, this is Ron Beatty. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely, please do.
I've heard a couple of things. I think we're talking about three distinct things. The first discussion was about the mayor's emergency order. The statute gives the mayor exclusive authority to declare a local emergency under Chapter 12, which only can last 3 days and has to be extended by the council, all of which happened in mid-March. And the council's resolution says that it's effective until further notice. So the council could undo the emergency order. I agree with Chief Falls's analysis of this. I'm city attorney in 7 cities, some in Hennepin, some in Ramsey, some in Wright County. Every one of them declared a local emergency, and I haven't seen any interest in taking that away. But that's one part of the discussion. What Paul just referred to a minute ago is as the governor's stay-at-home order is being modified, some cities are beginning to think about at least limitedly opening City Hall, and they and other employers have to have a plan in place to do that. So that's the second piece. The third piece, though, which is what I think some people may be thinking about, is the telephone meetings or other electronic meetings. That's a different issue. It's related to the emergency order, but it's a separate issue. The statute gives the presiding officer, which in our case would be the mayor, or the chief administrative officer, which would be the city administrator, or the chief legal counsel, which would be me, the authority under the statute in the case of a pandemic or an emergency order to determine that it's not prudent or practical to have in-person meetings. Well, we had all three. We had a statewide emergency declared by the governor. We had a local emergency declared by the mayor, which I just described, and we had a pandemic. And it was based on those three things that in mid-March, the mayor, as the presiding officer, determined that it was no longer prudent or practical to have in-person meetings, and thus we have the electronic meetings. So we can certainly have a further discussion, and I'll be happy to provide some additional information, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that these are related, but they are distinct issues.
Thank you, Ron. Very, very good clarification. So, like I said, I'm certainly willing to have that conversation with the entire council, maybe at our next work session, May 18th, to decide what is the best, prudent, safest way to proceed. And then also we can talk about the procedures themselves. I'm not sure we can really say what timing that will be, but at least we can have some discussion around it, more depth than we have today. So any other questions? So with that, then we'll move on to our administrative items, such as our staff report. Mr. Baroni, do you have any reports?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I have a couple of items. We just sort of talked about one of the items, which was the governor extending last Friday the stay-at-home thing. And as Chief Falls mentioned, we did talk today about there's going to be a point in time when City Hall is going to reopen, but if and when that happens, it's going to probably look a lot different than how we did business in the past in order to maintain the social distancing. We're not going to go back to the way it was, at least not for now. So we're going to have to, we're going to talk about that between the chief and I. We'll include Gary, and eventually we'll include our other department directors, because this impacts employees of theirs that work at the front desk, et cetera. So we'll be starting that conversation. But also, as Chief Fall said, and as Mr. Beatty said, you know, we just don't know, and you know, we're just going to try to prepare in the eventuality that we return to working at City Hall versus all working from home, what that's going to look like, and how we can take precautions to ensure city staff safety. Couple other items. National Night Out, and because of COVID, it was scheduled for the first Tuesday in August 4th, and that is now being moved to Tuesday, October 6th. That was done by the national agency, and after talking with Chief Fall today, he and the other West Metro area agencies are all moving their National Night Out dates basically back 2 months. And then the final item I have is, believe it or not, I'm working on the distribution with Ms. Polfus about the city administrator performance review process. That should be going out to council members and city management staff participants tomorrow from her. The timeline will be attached to it as to how long you have to return your review form. I will be providing my self-evaluation, job description of my position, And then you'll return that all to Ally, and she will work through the process of compiling all the data. And then eventually there'll be a personnel committee in the next couple of weeks to review the materials, and then some information will come back to the city council at a future city council meeting, hopefully in closed session. I don't know how we'll figure that out, but we'll figure it out via telephone to do my performance review. And then I'm not the only one that's going to speak. Mr. Peters, a couple items that popped up today, is going to talk about the Sunnyfield Tower rehab and then irrigation ban potentially for that area and the reasons why. So, Gary? Hello, Gary?
Did we lose Gary?
Nope, sorry, I forgot.
Yeah, he was on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Baroni. Madam Mayor, Council, we did have our pre-con for the rehab at the Sunnyfield Tower today. They're looking to start here in mid-June on the entire rehab project. We discussed we will be draining the tower, instead of just dropping that water, we will be using that water down as low as we can before we isolate the tower itself, so we're not going to be wasting a lot of water. There will be some, of course, that will be wasted, but I will try to use it up as much as possible. We did discuss having an issue with pressure and with water supply. We're afraid with a sprinkler going, if it gets dry, and we could run into a real issue with the pressure problem and with the supply problem. So we may be looking at putting a sprinkling ban on the north end of town. Just want to put that out there early enough that it's on your guys' radar to be aware of it. We are meeting Thursday on site with the companies to remove the antennas, to look at sites on the property where portable antennas can be put up. I will be contacting them too, or talking to them about piggybacking our SCADA system onto maybe one of their towers, so that we don't have to have our own tower. We can just piggyback onto one of theirs. There was some questions also brought about work schedules. Since this is a pretty major project for us, they're wondering if they can extend their days on good days, instead of being done at 7, if they could work till 8:30 Monday through Friday on days when it's beautiful out, so they can get this done in a timely fashion. Saturday is already an 8 to 6 type deal, but they are asking if they would get rain, that they could work on Sundays. So I guess that's going to be out there for approval for you guys, to give them permission just to keep the project rolling. If they would run into a lot of rain during the week and they would need to work a Saturday and a Sunday to get caught up, they want it out there to know if that's going to be a possibility in the near future. So that's one other issue that they had, one other question they had. Their job supervisor there would like to park a fifth wheel camper there. He is from out of town. He would stay on site there. It's all self-contained. This is serve two purposes. He'd be there to watch all their equipment. They have a lot of expensive.
Oops.
Whoops. Hello.
Oops.
We can't hear you.
All right, Gary, we lost you in mid-sentence there.
Okay. So did Gary want to have an answer on the extended hours today, or does he want to have it as we get closer to the start date, or what was he looking for?
Madam
Well, Mayor and Council.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah. No, you go ahead. Take it.
So, Madam Mayor, this is Allison Fauski. I was in the pre-construction conference today as well. The contractor, as Gary indicated, was looking for some leniency on the work hours. Certainly not expecting, if the council wants some time to consider that, if the council would like to give direction at a future date, that we can pass it to the contractor. Similarly with the request to have a recreational vehicle on site for that one employee, if that's something that the council is opposed to, again, just to provide that information to the contractor. They're not looking to start until June. the middle
Okay.
of June. So we do have some time, but we did want to get back to the contractor in a timely fashion if the council's adamantly opposed to it, or if there's some considerations, or if council's amenable to any of those questions.
So, Ms. Fauski and Mr. Baroni and Mr. Peters, if you're there and can hear us, here's what I would say. I'd like to have some time to kind of digest this, but the other thing I'd like to find out is how noisy is this? You know, noise levels, and how disruptive could it possibly be to the abutting neighbors? That's the kind of thing I think we'd have to find out before we just say carte blanche, yeah, go ahead with extended hours. Off the top of my head, I'm willing to say yes, but then, you know, maybe there's some other things that we're not considering. And so I just want to have some of that information, I think, before we say yes or no.
Mayor and Council, I think as I listened to Gary today and was thinking about what he presented to you before he fell off the face of the earth here,
Yeah.
I'm thinking that maybe the mayor raises a couple of good points about noise levels or disruptions, and maybe I can talk with both Gary and with Ms. Fauski, who's probably got a little bit more experience than I do in tower rehabs. Maybe we can have the company put together a written request for all the items they're looking to do, which is the extended hours during the weekdays, maybe working the same extended hours on Saturday, and also possibly utilizing Sunday based on rain so they don't fall behind. And then also we can add in some information about the irrigation ban that Gary was talking about because of the low level of the water that will be in that tower. And then also see if we can find out some more information about noise levels and things that might disrupt neighbors. We certainly don't want to pick them off, but, you know, I think the questions are valid. I think we should be able to provide you some answers and hopefully bring that back to future council, since they're not starting till meetings. They're not starting till mid-June, so we got a little bit of time.
Okay.
Here.
So we would have at least, if not next two meetings, the next meeting or even the fourth. Yeah. Also, how much lighting is especially in the evening, is going to be needed, that kind of thing. So if you can bring that back, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about that.
All right, great. Thank you. Good idea.
Because I don't want any surprises for neighbors. So that's the thing.
Right. And then, anything else then that Gary wanted to report on?
No, I think he covered it all before he, like I said, fell off the face of the earth there. I'll find out what happened.
Find out.
Mr. Baroni, if I may,
Yes.
is the council aware of the force main break over the weekend?
No, that was the final items. So, yeah, do you want to?
Oh, before we move on to that, I do have a concern.
Yeah, go ahead, Molitor. Yes, go ahead.
On the proposed irrigation ban, since that's going to impact more people than just those immediately around the tower, we may want to get a decision on that sooner rather than later if people are planning. You know, it's kind of planting season right now, and
right,
you know, and it's also for lawns. If you're going to fertilize, you need to have water. So people need a little lead time on that one.
Right.
So I didn't get the impression from Gary that this was yes, we definitely need this, or this was just something under consideration. But I think we need to get that finalized in short order, because that's going to have a pretty broad effect, and I could put people out some money if they've already made investments in fertilizer and such.
I get that.
Yeah, if I may jump back.
Hey,
sorry.
He's back.
Yeah, no, we weren't looking for a decision on that today. Just wanted to give you a warning on that it might happen. We are going to do a test shutdown of the tower. We're going to close the valve just to make sure that we can keep up with everything, that our water supply will continue, and see what the pressure looks like. So we will give ample warning, before any of that would come about. We would know. Also, we would definitely have to inform everybody on that water system, of the tower being shut down, and that they may notice low pressure and, stuff like that. So, yeah, no, this was just the sprinkler, just to kind of give you hey, this may happen. And then I agree with Mike. Yeah, this was just kind of a heads up on all the other stuff too. It's a great idea to have them write up what they're needing for what they're requesting. I think that's a great idea. It was just more to get it out there to get discussion rolling on it.
All right, great. And then with that, when we bring that back, we can maybe have some more discussion on watering bans or sprinkler bans. We can maybe try and work some things out there too. So, all right,
Correct.
good comments. Yep. All right.
My last is on Force Main 7. We did have another break Saturday morning. It just happened to be posted in the neighborhood for seasonal flushing and drove through, and the road erupted right in front of them.
Okay, now which, Gary, Force Main 7, where is that?
That's the Force Main on Lakeview and Shady, the one that's being redone.
No. Yeah.
So
okay.
we did get it. That happened right. It just happened to be that Carter was driving down that road and actually saw it bubble up. So he got down to the lift station. We did shut it off. We've got a pump truck out on scene. We did it in-house. The road was already cut where the break was. It was right next to another one. About 5.5 hours, they were all done. Everything's patched in. So hopefully it holds together now until we get the new one in.
All right. Yeah. Jeez. All right. Good thing we are replacing it. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
The systems.
Say that again, Mike Molitor.
That wasn't me. It was somebody else. That was Gary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other staff reports then?
No.
All right. I have a question for Ms. Bowski. A letter, I believe, was sent out to the residents for the assessment hearing in 2 weeks. Do you know that went out?
Madam Mayor, I believe that was sent out last week.
All right, good, thank you. All right, council reports. We'll start with Mr. Chumperland.
2 items, both Pioneer Sarah Creek. They had another TAC meeting today. The emphasis on that was to take the projects that the cities had forwarded to Diane Spector, and she was going to put them in a spreadsheet if they were not already there. The spreadsheet is quite dated and has a lot of projects in it. Some of them are kind of general, some are more specific, like whale tail. But to update that, and that would be then conceivably projected projects for the next 5 to 10 years. That would be part of the 4th Gen document that we will see then on the 21st when we have our next monthly meeting. A week ago today, we had a preliminary budget meeting. Chairman Baker, Vice Chair Fay, and myself projecting on what the budget might look like for 2021. Good news for us and for everybody basically is we're not changing the city assessments for the year, the total dollar anyway. Obviously, the individual assessments keep fluctuating because how they arrive at them is fair market value from the Hennepin County Assessor for all the cities and all the homesteads that fall within the Pioneer Sarah Creek watershed, and then taking that total and dividing each city's individual fair market value to get at a percentage of the total assessment. So those numbers fluctuate, and this year, more than that I've seen in the couple years I've been there, they really fluctuated. Good news for Minnetrista is projected we will drop $484 approximately. And all the other cities except for Greenfield. Greenfield takes a big hit, and we don't know why that is, if the ag lands have been reevaluated or what. But looking back a couple of years, they took big credits for 2 years in a row, too, greater than what they're being charged, increasing this year. So precise, it looks like we will have a slight reduction in our assessment from the commission, and we also have a preliminary talks on maybe trying to change the way we go about allocating out those assessments, basically maybe using a 3-year average or a 5-year average. So if fair market values get adjusted for any reason in one city, it doesn't flux everything out of whack. So we'll take that.
That would be a, yeah, John, that would be a JPA change. So that would then have to come to all of the councils, all 6 councils for approval. So, yeah.
That's the big hassle.
Yeah, yeah,
But
right.
We'll see how Greenfield accepts this big hit for the year because that may be the driving force.
Okay.
So that'll be at the
All right.
meeting on the 21st as well. That was it.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Ms. Bruce, anything?
I attended the Mound Fire meeting on April 22nd, and that's included in the information packet, so council members can look there. But just a couple items to note: their audited fund balance ended up being about $228,000 ahead of the plan, which is good news. And their fund reserves were budgeted to draw down $60,000 last year, but they ended up actually adding $42,000 to the fund reserves. We also discussed, as we have many times before, the possibility of a fire district, and I think we came to the conclusion that it would be a good idea to get the Mound and St. Bonnie mayors and fire chiefs together to explore what it would take to get that ball rolling. So other details are in the information packet if anybody has any questions. And Mr. Baroni, if you get any communication from the St. Bonnie Fire Department, would you please forward it to me? They've got a new fire chief, and I just want to make sure that we don't have communication snafus that we've had in the past. So just FYI.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Molitor, anything?
Nothing to report. Thank you.
All right. And Ms. Mortensen?
Nothing to report.
All right. Thank you. So I'll make it brief. Yes, I attended the Mound Fire meeting as well, again via Zoom. And I have spoken with Mr. Baroni, and I have also spoken previously to Mayor Ritsonoya in St. Bonnie and indicated that we should be talking about a fire district. And it looks like we're going to be talking with mayors and administrators of not just St. Bonnie, Minnetrista, and Mound, but Spring Park will be included in that as well. And we're going to hopefully get some meetings started this summer on that. The other thing, I've been attending other Zoom meetings. Unfortunately, they're not a lot of fun since you can't see people very well and so on. But having said that, hopefully we'll get back to some semblance of normal in the future here, but not knowing when. The annual Mayor's Conference was canceled with the LMC. There's an annual Mayor's Conference the end of April, and that was canceled, of course. And then also, I believe the annual City Conference has been canceled. That's in June. So a lot of things are being rescheduled and or just simply canceled for this year, which is unfortunate but necessary. With that, I think that's everything that I have. There's nothing else, then we can be adjourned. Is there
I make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Ms. Mortensen made that motion. I believe Mr. Molitor seconded that. Is that correct?
Sure.
All right. All right. Thank you. So with that, Ms. Mortensen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Molitor?
Aye.
Mr. Chumperland?
Aye.
Ms. Bruce?
Aye.
I vote yes, so that's 5-0. So we are adjourned until May 18th, I believe?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and stay healthy, all of you. Thanks. Bye.